Imagine for a moment that you're standing on what seems like solid, ancient ground, maybe on the weathered stones of a Neolithic temple or the sun-baked plaza of a forgotten ceremonial site. What you see around you is impressive enough. Massive blocks of stone arranged with impossible precision, structures that have stood for thousands of years. But what if I told you that the real marvel isn't above you at all? It's hidden just beneath the surface, an entire world of tunnels, chambers, and designs so sophisticated that modern engineers still can't fully explain how they were built. These are the subterranean networks beneath ancient megaliths, and they represent one of history's most captivating mysteries. All around the globe, from the Mediterranean to the high plateaus of Turkey, ancient peoples carved out sprawling underground complexes that defy belief. These aren't just simple caves or crude shelters. We're talking about multi-level cities capable of housing thousands, sacred spaces with acoustic properties that alter sound in magical ways, and passageways aligned with the stars above. They were built without metal tools, without blueprints, and without the technology we take for granted today, yet they have endured, silent and largely untouched, for millennia. What drove these civilizations to dig so deep? What secrets do these spaces hold? And why, after all this time, do they continue to challenge everything we think we know about early human innovation? In this video, we're setting out on a journey to explore these enigmatic underworlds. We'll venture into places like Malta's Hypogeum, where sound resonates in ways that seem almost supernatural, and descend into the depths of Derinkuyu, an entire city hidden beneath the earth. We'll ask not only how these structures were made, but why, uncovering the spiritual, practical, and perhaps even astronomical reasons behind their creation. This is more than a tour of ancient ruins. It's an invitation to rethink history itself, to marvel at the genius of our ancestors, and to uncover stories that have been waiting in the dark just below our feet for ages. So settle in, we're about to delve deep into the worlds beneath megaliths. When we think of ancient stone structures, our minds often jump to the iconic images of Stonehenge's towering monoliths or the Great Pyramids of Egypt, monuments that dominate the landscape and capture the imagination. But what if these visible wonders are only half the story? The term megalith comes from the Greek words for large and stone, and it typically brings to mind these massive, above-ground constructions. However, some of the most fascinating and perplexing aspects of these sites aren't the stones you can see, it's the astonishingly complex worlds carved out beneath them. For countless ancient cultures, going underground wasn't just about seeking shelter. It was about creating spaces of profound ritual, innovation, and community, often with a level of planning and skill that we're only beginning to understand. Beneath the surface of many of these ancient sites, you'll find far more than simple storage pits or burial chambers. We're talking about elaborate multi-level labyrinths, complete with interconnected tunnels, staircases that descend into the earth, and rooms designed with specific purposes in mind, from ceremonial halls to residential quarters. In places like Malta's Hypogeum, the underground complex mirrors the form and function of above-ground temples, with carefully carved pillars, altars, and even painted ceilings, all executed in solid rock. Over in Cappadocia, Turkey, the underground city of Derinkuyu extends nearly 300 feet deep, with 18 explorable levels that once housed thousands of people, complete with stables, churches, and sophisticated ventilation systems that provided fresh air to its inhabitants. These weren't crude dugouts, they were intentional, refined architectural feats. What makes these subterranean designs so captivating isn't just their scale or complexity. It's the thoughtful details that suggest a deep understanding of both engineering and human experience. Many of these spaces feature remarkable acoustic properties. In certain chambers, a single spoken word can resonate in ways that feel otherworldly, amplifying sound or creating harmonics that might have been used in rituals to alter states of consciousness or to communicate across long distances. Then there are the astronomical alignments. Some underground passages and openings are positioned to capture the sun's rays or the light of specific stars on significant dates, linking the rhythms of the cosmos with life below the Earth. This combination of practical ingenuity and symbolic meaning reveals societies that were not just surviving, but thriving with a rich intellectual and spiritual life. These hidden depths challenge the conventional narrative of prehistoric people as primitive or unsophisticated. Without metal tools, without written blueprints, and without the machinery we rely on today, ancient builders managed to excavate and shape solid stone into stable, enduring structures that have stood for thousands of years. They selected their sites with care, choosing stable rock types and designing drainage and ventilation systems that prefigure modern engineering principles. The continuity of design across regions and cultures also raises intriguing questions. Was this knowledge discovered independently by different groups, or was there some form of shared understanding that spanned continents and generations? Each tunnel, each chamber, each carefully smoothed wall is a testament to human creativity and adaptability. Ultimately, these subterranean networks invite us to expand our definition of megalithic culture beyond the impressive stones that stand in the open air. They remind us that for ancient peoples, the world was multi-layered both physically and symbolically. The earth itself was a medium to be shaped, a source of protection, a temple, and a home. By exploring these underground marvels, we don't just uncover forgotten rooms, we uncover new dimensions of human history, revealing stories of innovation, belief, and community that have been waiting in the dark, silently challenging us to recognize the full brilliance of our ancestors. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most extraordinary examples of this ancient subterranean genius, the Hypogeum of Halsaflieni on the Mediterranean island of Malta. This isn't merely an underground cave, it's an entire temple complex painstakingly carved by hand from the solid limestone bedrock over centuries, beginning more than 5,000 years ago. To put that age into perspective, this site was already ancient by the time the Great Pyramid of Giza was even a concept. Designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site for its immense cultural value, the Hypogeum represents a pinnacle of Neolithic achievement, a multi-level labyrinth that descends deep into the earth, comprising halls, chambers, and passages that span 3 distinct levels. What immediately strikes visitors and researchers alike is how the Hypogeum's design meticulously replicates the features of the megalithic temples found above ground on Malta. The underground complex includes carved imitations of stone doorways, pillars, and even ceiling decorations that mimic the corbelled vaulting seen in surface structures. This intentional mirroring strongly suggests that the Hypogeum was far more than a shelter or a burial place. It was a sacred space, a direct extension of the island's spiritual landscape. The so-called Oracle Chamber is one of its most famous rooms, and for good reason. This chamber possesses a truly baffling acoustic property. A deep male voice speaking or chanting at a certain pitch can create a resonance that reverberates through the entire lower level, a powerful, haunting vibration that feels both physical and spiritual. This was likely no accident. Archaeologists and acousticians theorize that this sonic feature was intentionally engineered to amplify ritualistic chanting or drumming, potentially used to alter states of consciousness during ceremonies or to communicate sounds across the vast network of rooms. The sophistication of its construction is a marvel in itself. The builders worked with only the simplest of tools, stone hammers, antler picks, and obsidian blades, yet they achieved a remarkable level of precision. They understood the properties of the limestone, knowing exactly where to carve to create stable ceilings, and how to shape corridors to control airflow and moisture. The discovery of red ochre paintings on some of the ceilings depicting spirals and other symbolic patterns adds another layer of depth to our understanding. These artworks, combined with the remains of thousands of individuals found within small burial chambers, indicate that the Hypogeum served a dual purpose. It was a final resting place for the community and a powerful venue for the rituals that connected the living with the ancestors and the spiritual world. The very existence of the Hypogeum forces us to reconsider the social structure of its builders. Creating such an immense and complex project required more than just a few skilled workers. It demanded organized labor, advanced planning, and a shared cultural vision sustained over many generations. This was a society capable of sophisticated architectural design, deep spiritual belief, and coordinated effort on a grand scale. It offers us a profound glimpse into a sophisticated underground world that challenges our traditional view of Neolithic people, revealing a culture with a surprising understanding of engineering, artistry, and the powerful interplay between sound, space, and human ceremony. While the Hypogeum offers a window into the ritual and spiritual life of a Neolithic community, another type of subterranean marvel reveals a different, yet equally astonishing, aspect of ancient life, the fully functional, self-contained underground city. And perhaps no site exemplifies this better than the breathtaking complex of Derinkuyu, hidden deep within the otherworldly landscape of Cappadocia in central Turkey. This isn't a temple or a tomb. It's an entire metropolis carved into the volcanic rock, a labyrinthine refuge so vast and complete that it could shelter an estimated 20,000 people for months at a time. The sheer scale is almost incomprehensible. Imagine an entire town, men, women, children, and their livestock vanishing beneath the earth, sealing themselves off from the world above with massive, wheel-shaped stone doors. The sophistication of Derinkuyu's urban planning is what truly sets it apart. This was no simple cluster of caves. It was a vertically organized city, descending an astonishing 18 levels to a depth of nearly 300 feet. Each level served a distinct purpose, creating a functional ecosystem for long-term habitation. There were living quarters, of course, but also spaces for winemaking and oil presses, communal kitchens, cellars for storage, and even stables with tethering holes carved directly into the stone floors. Remarkably, the city included dedicated rooms that functioned as churches, complete with carved crosses and altars, and evidence suggests there were also areas used as schools, meeting halls, and even a graveyard. This wasn't just a hiding place, it was a complete society operating in the silent, dimly lit world below. A city of this size and depth presents obvious challenges, the most immediate being how to simply breathe. The ancient engineers solved this with a genius ventilation system centered around a massive, 150-foot deep central shaft. This primary well provided a constant supply of fresh air that circulated throughout the complex, while also serving as a primary water source, drawing from the same underground aquifer that supplied the surface world. Dozens of additional, smaller ventilation shafts were meticulously engineered to be indistinguishable from the surface, preventing enemies from spotting them or poisoning the air supply. The builders also included a sophisticated network of channels and cisterns for water management and drainage, ensuring the city remained dry and habitable. The question of who built Derinkuyu and when is a subject of ongoing debate. While it is widely associated with early Christian communities, particularly from the Byzantine era, who used it as a refuge from Arab invasions during the 7th and 8th centuries, many archaeologists believe its origins are far older. The initial excavation could date back to the Hittites or even the Phrygians, over 2,500 years ago, with later generations Persians, early Christians, and others, successively expanding and modifying the complex to meet their needs. This long history of use points to a universal and timeless human need, the search for safety. The motivation for creating such an immense sanctuary is etched into the turbulent history of the region. Cappadocia's fertile land and strategic location made it a crossroads of civilization and, consequently, a frequent target for invading armies. For the people living there, the ability to disappear underground was their ultimate defense strategy. Those massive stone doors, each weighing hundreds of kilograms and rolling into place to block key passageways, were the final line of defense. Life down there, while safe, would have been incredibly demanding, confined, dark, and reliant on limited resources. Yet, the very existence of Derinkuyu stands as a powerful testament to human resilience and ingenuity, a monument not to kings or gods, but to the collective will of an entire community to survive against all odds. So we've seen how the incredible engineering and the breathtaking scale of these underground worlds. But this leads us to an even more compelling question. Why? Why would entire communities dedicate generations of labor to carving out lives in the dark, away from the sun and sky? The answer is as complex and layered as the structures themselves, weaving together survival, spirituality, and a profound understanding of the world around them. On the most practical level, the motivation was often starkly simple: safety. In a world of constant threats, going underground was the ultimate form of protection. For the people of Cappadocia, this meant escaping the relentless waves of invaders that swept across the region. Their deep cities were fortresses turned inside out, with massive stone doors sealing the surface world away. In other climates, the Earth itself provided a natural insulation against the elements, a constant, cool temperature to preserve food in scorching deserts, or a warm refuge from bitter winters above. These spaces also served as immense, secure storage facilities for grain, wine, and oil, safeguarding a community's most vital resources against both theft and spoilage. The decision to build down was, in many cases, a brilliant and necessary strategy for resilience, but to assume these places were only about physical survival misses a much deeper and more fascinating truth. For countless ancient cultures, the underground was not a place of darkness to be feared, but a sacred realm to be revered. It was seen as the womb of the Earth Mother, a direct portal to the underworld and the domain of ancestors and spirits. This belief transformed tunnels and chambers into spiritual conduits. Sites like the Hypogeum in Malta were likely used for rituals of burial and communion, where the echoing acoustics could carry chants into the earth, perhaps to communicate with those who had passed on. In these sacred spaces, the boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the divine became thin, and the act of descending was a form of spiritual journeying. This spiritual purpose was often intimately tied to the cosmos above. The ancient mind saw no disconnect between the heavens and the earth. They were part of a single, interconnected system. This is why we find subterranean structures meticulously aligned with celestial events. Newgrange in Ireland is the classic example, where a precise roof box allows the rising sun of the winter solstice to flood the deepest inner chamber with a beam of light, banishing the darkness on the shortest day of the year. This wasn't just a clever trick of engineering, it was a powerful symbolic act. It represented the triumph of light over darkness, life over death, and the promise of the sun's return. By anchoring their rituals to these astronomical cycles, ancient peoples embedded their most profound beliefs into the very rock beneath their feet. Beyond the sacred and the practical, these spaces also fulfilled essential social functions. They were the ultimate communal projects requiring cooperation and a shared vision on a massive scale. The very act of building them would have strengthened social bonds and defined a community's identity. Once completed, they served as sheltered gathering places for meetings, for education, for shared meals protected from the weather outside. In a very real sense, these underground complexes were the heart of a community, a hidden nucleus where culture, knowledge, and tradition were preserved and passed down through generations, safe from the disruptions of the world above. Ultimately, trying to pin a single purpose on these structures is impossible because they were designed to be multifunctional, reflecting the holistic way ancient peoples viewed their existence. A single chamber could be a safe room for sleeping, a sacred space for a morning ritual, and a perfect vantage point to witness a celestial event at noon. The genius of these designs lies in their seamless integration of the daily and the divine, the practical and the profound. They show us societies that planned not just for the immediate threat, but for the eternal cycle of seasons, for the journey of the soul, and for the enduring legacy of their community. In digging down, they were not hiding from the world. They were creating a richer, deeper, and more meaningful one. Considering the immense scale and precision of these underground cities and temples, it's almost natural to assume some form of advanced, lost technology must have been involved. The reality, however, is far more fascinating. The true miracle lies not in mysterious tools, but in the breathtaking combination of profound patience, acute observation, and a deep, intuitive understanding of the natural world. These builders were master geologists long before the science had a name. Before a single blow was struck, they would have spent generations learning the land, identifying the most suitable rock types, like the relatively soft volcanic tuff in Cappadocia or the workable limestone in Malta, and meticulously planning their excavations to follow natural fault lines and avoid unstable areas. This wasn't guesswork, it was applied earth science passed down through an oral tradition of trial and error that we can scarcely imagine today. The toolkit itself seems almost laughably simple from our modern perspective. Archaeologists have found evidence of stone hammers, chisels made from harder stones like flint or obsidian, and picks fashioned from the sturdy antlers of deer. These were the primary instruments used to carve out entire cities, but to focus on the simplicity of the tools is to miss the point entirely. The real technology was the technique. One of the most widespread and effective methods was a process known as fire setting. Workers would build a hot fire directly against the rock face they wanted to fracture. Once the stone was sufficiently heated, they would rapidly cool it by dousing it with water, vinegar, or even animal fat. The resulting thermal shock caused the rock to crack and split, allowing them to break off manageable chunks that could then be shaped and smoothed with their hand tools. It was a slow, laborious, and incredibly dangerous process, but it was remarkably effective for large-scale excavation. Perhaps the most awe-inspiring aspect of this ancient engineering is the undeniable evidence of sophisticated structural planning. These were not random tunnels dug in desperation. In Derinkuyu, the architects ensured stability by leaving large sections of solid rock intact to act as central support pillars, much like the load-bearing walls in a modern high-rise. Corridors were carefully designed to be just wide enough for movement but narrow enough to be easily defensible and structurally sound. They incorporated intricate ventilation shafts that provided fresh air to the deepest levels and complex water management systems with wells and cisterns that were sealed to prevent contamination. This level of foresight indicates not just practical knowledge, but a form of advanced architectural thinking that considered airflow, hydrology, static loads, and long-term habitability. A puzzle that continues to intrigue researchers is the striking consistency in design principles found in subterranean structures across different continents and cultures, from the oracle chambers of Malta to the sun-aligned passage tombs of Ireland and the refuge cities of Turkey. This raises a profound question. Did this knowledge spread through ancient trade routes and cultural exchange, a shared package of engineering solutions that traveled with migrating peoples? Or does it represent a fascinating case of independent innovation, where different human societies, when faced with similar needs for protection, storage, or spiritual expression, arrived at startlingly similar solutions by leveraging the same logic and materials available to them? This pattern suggests a universal human capacity for problem-solving that, when fueled by necessity, can achieve near-identical brilliant results in complete isolation. When we compare this ancient mastery of earth and stone to our modern underground projects, the contrast in methodology is stark, but the comparison in outcome is humbling. We dig with massive diesel-powered tunnel boring machines, reinforce everything with steel and concrete, and rely on computer models to predict stress points. They used fire, water, and stone, guided by knowledge etched into their collective memory, yet their creations have endured for millennia, while our modern infrastructures require constant maintenance and have a fraction of the lifespan. Their engineering prowess highlights a level of skill that wasn't just functional, it was harmonious. They worked with the earth, understanding its properties and rhythms, rather than simply forcing their will upon it. This sustainable, intuitive form of engineering rivals our own in its durability, and in its elegant simplicity and longevity, arguably surpasses it in certain profound ways. But the engineering brilliance of these ancient builders extended far beyond just the visual and the structural. In the profound silence of these underground worlds, they were also masters of something far more ethereal and just as powerful: sound itself. Step into a chamber like the so-called oracle room in Malta's Hypogeum, and you step into a space that feels almost alive. Speak in a deep, resonant tone, and your voice doesn't just echo, it transforms. It amplifies, it vibrates through the stone floor and up through your very bones, creating a sensation that is both awe-inspiring and deeply unsettling. This is not a quirky accident of architecture. The acoustic properties found in this and many other ancient subterranean sites are far too specific, far too consistent, to be anything other than intentional. The builders were not just shaping rock, they were shaping experience, using the physics of sound waves to craft environments that could alter human consciousness. This sophisticated understanding of acoustics suggests a knowledge that we typically associate with modern concert hall designers, not Neolithic communities. Researchers using modern equipment have taken precise measurements in these spaces and made a startling discovery. Many of these chambers are tuned to specific resonant frequencies, often right around 110 Hz. This is a profoundly significant number. Scientific studies have shown that exposure to sound waves at this specific frequency can have a measurable effect on the human brain, particularly on the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with mood, social behavior, and even our sense of self. It can suppress the normal language processing functions of the left hemisphere, allowing the more intuitive, pattern-seeking right hemisphere to become more dominant. In simpler terms, the very design of these rooms, the specific curves and angles of the carved walls and ceilings, could naturally induce states of heightened suggestibility, deep relaxation, or even mild trance. Imagine the power of this in a ritual context. A shaman or priest chanting in the center of such a chamber wouldn't just be heard. Their voice would become an all-encompassing physical force that filled the entire space. For the participants gathered in the darkness, this resonant vibration would blur the line between internal thought and external sound, between their own heartbeat and the pulse of the earth. It would have been the perfect tool for facilitating spiritual journeys, for making the presence of ancestors or deities feel tangibly real, and for forging a powerful, shared psychological experience that bound the community together. The architecture itself became a kind of instrument, played not with hands but with the human voice to orchestrate a collective emotional and spiritual event. The practical applications of this sonic engineering were likely just as important. In the vast, multi-level darkness of a place like Derinkuyu, where thousands of people needed to coordinate their activities or receive warnings, voice alone would have been a limited tool. But a drumbeat or a blast on a horn, transmitted through a network of tunnels and chambers specifically designed to carry and amplify sound, could have acted as an effective early warning system or a method of communication across great distances. A signal generated in one part of the complex could be heard clearly in another, allowing for a rapid, coordinated response to any threat or need. This turns the entire underground city into not just a dwelling, but a responsive, communicative organism. Ultimately, the acoustic mysteries of these sites force us to expand our definition of ancient technology. We often look for proof of advancement in tangible artifacts, in metalwork, in writing, in machinery. But here, the technology is immaterial. It is embedded in the empty space, in the carefully calculated voids between the stones. It demonstrates a holistic understanding of the human experience, one that seamlessly wove together the physical need for shelter with the spiritual need for transcendence and the social need for connection. These builders understood that to truly create a sacred or safe space, they had to engage all the senses, mastering the very air and the vibrations that moved through it, crafting an environment that could speak directly to the soul. Now, let's take this idea of intentional design even further, from the resonance of sound to the very capture of light itself. We've seen how ancient builders mastered the earth and the air within it, but their vision extended far beyond the ground, reaching directly for the heavens. It's a concept that might seem contradictory at first. Why would a culture that invested so much in going underground remain so fiercely connected to the sky above? The answer lies in one of the most breathtaking features of these subterranean worlds, their precise and almost certainly deliberate alignments with the sun, moon, and stars. This celestial connection transforms these spaces from simple shelters into something far more profound, cosmic clocks and spiritual conduits. The most famous and undeniable example is Newgrange in Ireland. This massive 5,000-year-old passage tomb, with its towering stone facade and inner chamber buried under a mound of earth, contains a feature so precise it feels modern. A narrow opening above the entrance known as a roof box. For just a few precious minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, around December 21st, a single, razor-thin beam of sunlight travels directly up the dark, 60-foot-long entrance passageway. It pierces the inner darkness to dramatically illuminate the intricate spiral carvings on the back wall of the central chamber. This event isn't a fleeting moment of chance. It is a spectacularly accurate astronomical alignment, requiring generations of observation and meticulous planning to achieve. In the depths of the darkest day of the year, this burst of light would have been a powerful symbol of hope, rebirth, and the undeniable promise that the sun's power was returning. But Newgrange is far from alone. Across the ancient world, we find evidence of this deep yearning to bring the cosmos underground. In the Hypogeum of Malta, although it is entirely subterranean, Some theorists suggest that certain shafts or openings might have once channeled light from the surface for symbolic or calendrical purposes, though much of this remains speculative due to modern construction above it. In Egypt, the so-called air shafts inside the Great Pyramid were long thought to be for ventilation, but many experts now believe they were precisely aligned with specific stars sacred to the pharaohs, like Orion and Sirius, intended not for the living to breathe, but for the soul of the deceased king to ascend directly to the heavens. This practice of connecting deep chambers with celestial bodies reveals a world view where the earthly and the cosmic were inextricably linked. The implication of these alignments is staggering. It means that the people who designed these structures were not just skilled engineers, they were also meticulous astronomers. They possessed a sophisticated understanding of the solar and lunar cycles, tracking the slow, predictable dance of the heavens across decades and centuries. They knew exactly where the sun would rise on the horizon on the most significant days of the year, the solstices and equinoxes that marked the turning points of the seasons, governing agriculture, migration, and ritual life. This knowledge was then encoded directly into their architecture, turning stone and earth into a permanent, immovable calendar. A community didn't need a written record or a portable device to know when to plant, when to harvest, or when to gather for the most important ceremonies. They simply needed to enter their sacred underground space and wait for the sun to deliver its signal. This fusion of the earthly and the celestial speaks to the very heart of ancient spirituality. By bringing the light of the solstice sun into the deepest, most hidden chamber, these cultures were performing a kind of cosmic magic. They were demonstrating their belief that the powers of the universe could be invited into the womb of the earth, that the cycle of death and rebirth, so evident in the setting and rising sun and in the dormancy and regrowth of crops, could be enacted and influenced within their most sacred spaces. The underground chamber became a theater for the cosmos, a place where the community could witness and participate in the fundamental rhythms of nature, ensuring through ritual that the sun would continue its cycle and life would go on. It was the ultimate act of harmony, a declaration that human life, the earth, and the heavens were all part of one continuous, interconnected whole. For the ancient cultures that created them, these underground spaces were far more than just architectural achievements. They were the very heart of their spiritual and cosmological understanding of the universe. To simply view them as shelters or fortresses is to miss their deepest meaning. In the minds of their builders, descending into these chambers was a symbolic journey, a passage from the realm of the living into a sacred domain that bridged the world above with the world below. This wasn't a place of fear, but of power and connection. Across countless traditions, the underworld was perceived not as a hellish landscape of punishment, but as a potent realm of ancestors, spirits, and regenerative forces. It was the womb of the Earth Mother, where the cycles of death, rebirth, and the very origins of life were eternally renewed. By carving out these spaces, our ancestors were physically manifesting this belief, creating a tangible interface where they could communicate with these powerful, unseen forces. This spiritual function is vividly illustrated by the types of artifacts and art left behind within these silent, dark halls. In the Hypogeum of Malta, the discovery of thousands of human remains, carefully placed in collective burial pits, points to its primary role as a massive ossuary, a final resting place that was deeply integrated with ritual practice. But it's the small, personal finds that are even more telling. Figurines of sleeping or corpulent women, often called fat ladies by archaeologists, were discovered in these chambers. These are not simple toys or decorations. They are widely interpreted as representations of a mother goddess or a deity associated with death, sleep, and regeneration. Their presence in the burial chambers suggests they were left as offerings to guide or protect the deceased in the afterlife, or to appeal to the goddess for fertility and abundance for the living community above. The art on the walls, the red ochre spirals and patterns, further transforms the stone into a symbolic landscape, perhaps mapping the journey of the soul or representing the cyclical nature of existence. The concept of these sites as portals is another recurring and powerful theme. In ancient Mesoamerica, for instance, caves were considered literal openings to the underworld, known as Xibalba to the Maya. They were seen as the place of origin for humanity and the destination for souls after death. Rituals performed in these natural and man-made subterranean spaces were acts of communion with the gods and ancestors. This idea resonates powerfully with the purpose of the Egyptian pyramids and their intricate subterranean chambers. While the pyramid reached for the stars, its internal passages and burial chambers were designed as a machine for resurrection, a protected vessel where the pharaoh's soul could begin its perilous journey through the underworld to be judged and hopefully join the gods. The architecture itself was a roadmap for this celestial and chthonic voyage. Furthermore, these spaces almost certainly served as stages for initiation rites and secret ceremonies. The very act of descending into the darkness, leaving the familiar world of light and sound behind, would have been a powerful psychological experience. For a young member of the community, undergoing a rite of passage in such an environment, perhaps accompanied by the disorienting, resonant acoustics we discussed, would have been transformative. It would strip away their old identity in the darkness, allowing them to be metaphorically reborn into a new status as a full adult or an initiated member of a spiritual group when they ascended back to the surface. This process of symbolic death and rebirth, enacted in the belly of the earth, mirrored the very cycles of nature they revered and depended upon for survival. Ultimately, understanding this cultural and religious dimension allows us to see these structures not as separate from the above-ground megaliths, but as their essential counterpart. If the towering stone circles and temples were reaching for the heavens, connecting with the sun, moon, and stars, then these subterranean complexes were their roots, connecting with the ancestral past and the generative powers of the earth itself. Together, they formed a complete cosmic picture, a sacred geography that encompassed all layers of existence. The immense effort required to build them was not just a practical investment in security, it was a profound declaration of faith. It was an investment in maintaining the cosmic order, ensuring the fertility of their land, the continuity of their people, and the safe passage of their souls, anchoring their entire worldview in the very bedrock beneath their feet. It is a fascinating exercise to place the architectural blueprints of an ancient underground city side by side with those of a modern subway system or a nuclear bunker. On the surface, the comparison seems to favor modern engineering overwhelmingly. We have tunnel boring machines that chew through rock at an astonishing pace, computer models that predict structural stresses with pinpoint accuracy, and materials like reinforced concrete and steel that allow us to create vast, open spaces deep beneath metropolises. Our primary goals are clear and quantifiable: move the maximum number of people as efficiently as possible, or protect a population from an immediate, catastrophic threat. Every design decision is made in the name of speed, cost-effectiveness, and structural safety. The environment we create is purely functional, often stark, utilitarian, and devoid of any feature that does not serve its core purpose. Now contrast that with the world of Derinkuyu or the Hypogeum. Their builders did not have our technology, but they possessed a different kind of wisdom, one that wove together necessity with artistry and practicality with profound spirituality. They weren't just excavating space, they were crafting an experience. The walls weren't just left rough and functional, They were often smoothed, painted with ochre, or carved with intricate spirals and symbols. The chambers weren't just shaped for shelter, they were acoustically tuned to transform the human voice into something mystical. A modern engineer might see a ventilation shaft as a simple tube for moving air, but the ancient builder might also align that shaft with a star significant to their cosmology, turning a practical feature into a celestial connection. Their priority wasn't just to build a thing that worked, but to build a place that meant something. This fundamental divergence in philosophy reveals a starkly different relationship with the natural world. Modern underground construction is by its very nature an act of conquest. We force our way through the earth with immense machines, then line our tunnels with artificial materials to create a sterile, human-controlled environment that is entirely separate from the geology around it. We battle groundwater with pumps and reinforce weak rock with steel girders, asserting our dominance over the landscape. The ancient builder, however, worked as a collaborator with the earth. They chose their site not for its convenience but for its geology, the soft, carvable tough rock in Cappadocia, the stable limestone in Malta. They used the natural properties of the stone itself as the building material, shaping it but ultimately remaining a part of it. Their ventilation used natural thermal dynamics, and their water systems worked with gravity and natural aquifers. Theirs was a philosophy of integration rather than imposition. This isn't to say one approach is inherently better than the other. Our methods allow us to achieve scales and speeds they could never dream of, providing infrastructure for millions. But this comparison does force us to acknowledge a trade-off. In our relentless pursuit of efficiency and scale, we have largely stripped our subterranean spaces of any deeper meaning or aesthetic consideration. A subway station might have a mosaic or two to break the monotony, but it is first and foremost a machine for moving people. The ancient world reminds us that our built environment, even the parts we cannot see, can serve the human spirit as well as the human body. Their underground cities were homes, temples, community centers, and astronomical observatories all at once. They addressed the fear of invasion and the need for storage, but they also addressed the universal human needs for ritual, for beauty, and for a connection to something larger than themselves. Perhaps the most humbling lesson lies in the test of time. Our modern underground wonders, for all their technological brilliance, have a designed lifespan. They require constant, expensive maintenance. Concrete cancer, metal fatigue, and water intrusion are perpetual battles. Meanwhile, the stone-hewn chambers of the Hypogeum, built over 5,000 years ago with little more than antler picks and stone hammers, still stand perfectly stable. The city of Derinkuyu, without a single ounce of steel rebar, remains a monument to durability. Their intuitive engineering, born from a deep and patient understanding of their material, has proven to be astonishingly resilient. This longevity challenges our modern assumptions about progress, suggesting that in our focus on doing things faster and bigger, we may have overlooked some timeless principles of harmony, sustainability, and holistic design that our ancestors understood intuitively. This profound understanding of the earth itself was the silent, invisible partner in every ancient subterranean project. Before a single stone was struck, the success of these monumental endeavors hinged on one critical, non-negotiable factor: the choice of location. It wasn't about finding an empty plot of land. It was about reading the landscape like a blueprint, seeking out the specific geological conditions that would make such an ambitious undertaking not just possible, but stable and enduring for centuries to come. The ancient builders were, in every sense, master applied geologists. Their selection process was a sophisticated trifecta, balancing the need for the right material, the assurance of structural stability, and the advantage of pre-existing natural features. The most immediate consideration was the rock itself, its type, its hardness, and its workability. They sought out stone that was soft enough to be carved with their simple tools, yet strong enough to hold its shape and not collapse under its own weight. This is why the volcanic landscape of Cappadocia was nothing short of a geological gift. The region is blanketed in a thick layer of tuff, a rock formed from volcanic ash that solidified over millions of years. Tuff possesses a unique combination of qualities. It's relatively soft and easy to excavate when first exposed to air, but it gradually hardens upon contact with the atmosphere, forming a durable, resilient shell that is naturally resistant to weathering and erosion. This meant the builders could carve out vast, intricate spaces with relative efficiency, and those spaces would then naturally cure into a strong, stable, and permanent home. Similarly, on the islands of Malta, the Globigerina limestone was another perfect medium. It's a sedimentary rock that is soft and manageable to quarry and carve, yet it maintains excellent load-bearing properties, allowing for the creation of the Hypogeum's multi-level halls with their impressive spans. But finding the right rock was only the first step. The next was ensuring the ground was structurally sound. These early engineers displayed an intuitive understanding of bedrock stability, soil mechanics, and hydrogeology, the study of water within the earth. They meticulously avoided areas prone to landslides, fault lines, or seismic activity. They understood the danger of groundwater, carefully selecting sites situated high enough above the water table to prevent flooding and chronic dampness, which is why so many of these complexes are found in elevated locations or plateaus. In Cappadocia, the presence of an underlying, harder layer of volcanic basalt often capped the softer tuff, providing a naturally strong ceiling that required minimal additional support. They also knew how to read the land for natural features that could give them a head start. An existing cave system or a natural fissure in the rock wasn't just a convenient opening. It was a pre-made corridor, a gift from nature that could be expanded and integrated into a larger, planned design, saving an immense amount of labor and time. This deep, generational knowledge of the land points to a relationship with the environment that was fundamentally different from our own. We often approach construction today as an act of domination over nature. We use explosives, massive machinery, and reinforced materials to bend the landscape to our will, often fighting against its natural inclinations. The ancient builders, by stark contrast, practiced a philosophy of collaboration. They didn't try to conquer the geology, they learned to work with it. They saw the earth not as an obstacle, but as a partner. They understood its strengths and its weaknesses, its grain and its structure. They positioned their doorways to avoid natural weaknesses in the rock. They carved their ventilation shafts to leverage natural thermal currents for airflow, and they designed their water channels to work with gravity and natural springs. This wasn't primitive guesswork, it was a highly evolved form of sustainable engineering, born from centuries of careful observation and lived experience passed down from one generation to the next. The incredible longevity of these structures is the ultimate testament to the brilliance of their geological intuition. While our modern concrete infrastructures often have a designed lifespan of a century or so before requiring major renovation, these stone-hewn cities and temples, built thousands of years ago with the simplest of tools, remain standing, stable, and dry. They have withstood earthquakes, wars, and the relentless passage of time, not because they fought against the forces of nature, but because they were intelligently designed to become a part of them. In an era increasingly concerned with sustainability and resilience, their work offers a powerful, timeless lesson. It shows us that the most enduring solutions are often those that listen to the land first, that seek to understand and integrate with the natural world rather than simply overpower it. Their legacy is carved not just into stone, but into a profound and respectful dialogue with the very earth beneath our feet. While the incredible engineering of these underground cities reveals a mastery of physics and geology, the artistry found within their walls speaks to something even more profound: the human spirit's irrepressible need to create, to communicate, and to find meaning. Stepping into these spaces, we often expect to find only the stark, functional necessities of survival, but instead, we are met with a breathtaking explosion of creativity. The walls, far from being left bare, were transformed into the canvases of the ancient world, adorned with intricate carvings, vivid paintings, and symbolic motifs that offer us a direct, visceral connection to the minds and hearts of the people who sought refuge or worshiped there. This artistic richness completely transforms our understanding of these places. They were not just shelters for the body, but also sanctuaries for the soul, where culture and belief were literally etched into the very fabric of the earth for safekeeping. Consider the awe-inspiring passage tomb of Newgrange in Ireland. The massive, sweeping curbstones that circle the mound and the interior walls of the chamber itself are covered in a mesmerizing series of spirals, diamonds, zigzags, and concentric circles. These are not random scratches or idle doodles. To the Neolithic people who painstakingly pecked them into the hard rock using stone tools, these symbols were a powerful, likely sacred, language. The triple spiral, one of the most famous motifs, is a complex symbol that has been interpreted in numerous ways as a representation of the three realms of land, sea, and sky, as a symbol of the continuous cycle of life, death, and rebirth, or even as a map of the heavens. In the profound darkness of the tomb, illuminated only by the fleeting beam of the solstice sun or the flickering light of a fat lamp, these carvings would have come alive, their deep grooves casting dynamic shadows that seemed to move and swirl. They were an integral part of the ritual experience, a visual representation of the cosmological beliefs that the architecture itself was built to enact. This tradition of using art to convey deep meaning extends across the ancient world. Far beneath the Egyptian desert, in the catacombs of Alexandria and other burial complexes, the walls are adorned with stunning frescoes that blend Egyptian, Greek, and Roman artistic styles. Here, we don't find abstract patterns but vivid narratives. Deities like Anubis, the jackal-headed guide of the dead, and Serapis, a god of the underworld, are depicted in elaborate detail, overseeing the journey of the soul. Scenes from daily life, people fishing, farming, and feasting were painted not merely as decoration, but to provide comfort and familiar sustenance for the deceased in the afterlife. In the underground cities of Cappadocia, later Christian communities carved simple but powerful crosses into the stone doorways and painted biblical frescoes onto the walls of their hidden churches, turning their places of refuge into places of worship and asserting their identity and faith even in the deepest darkness. The purpose of this art was multifaceted. It was undoubtedly a form of decoration, a human impulse to beautify one's surroundings, even those buried deep within the earth. But it was also a sophisticated storytelling device. In a largely pre-literate world, these images were a primary method of passing down mythology, history, and important cultural knowledge from one generation to the next. A carved scene could tell the story of a great hunt, a creation myth, or the proper way to conduct a burial ritual. Furthermore, this art served as a potent form of religious symbolism. The act of carving a protective symbol like a spiral or a cross onto the entrance of a chamber or tomb was a way to ward off evil spirits and sanctify the space, imbuing it with spiritual power and marking it as a boundary between the mundane world and the sacred. What makes these underground galleries so invaluable to us today is their incredible state of preservation. protected from the erosive forces of wind, rain, and sun that have weathered and worn away so much above-ground art. These subterranean works have survived for millennia in stunning detail. The pigments of paintings have remained vibrant, and the sharp edges of carvings have stayed crisp, offering us an unparalleled window into the aesthetic sensibilities and symbolic world of ancient cultures. They preserve cultural narratives, beliefs, and artistic techniques that might otherwise have been completely lost to time. In their silent, enduring beauty, they remind us that for our ancestors, art was not a luxury. It was an essential language, a vital tool for survival, spirituality, and ensuring that their stories and their very identity would never be forgotten. The staggering sophistication of these subterranean worlds inevitably leads to a compelling and often heated debate. If we accept the mainstream archaeological timeline, we are left marveling at the sheer ingenuity of Neolithic or Bronze Age peoples. But for some, the evidence on the ground, the laser-like precision, the mind-boggling scale, the acoustic and astronomical genius seems to point toward something more. This has given rise to alternative theories that suggest we might be looking at the fingerprints of a much older, far more advanced civilization, one whose knowledge was largely lost to the great upheavals of time, perhaps in a cataclysmic event like a global flood. These ideas, popularized in books and documentaries, often venture into the realm of what is called pseudo-archaeology. They capture the public imagination with concepts like the lost continent of Atlantis, as described by Plato, suggesting a sophisticated seafaring culture that vanished beneath the waves, leaving behind only scattered clues. Another persistent theory is the ancient astronaut hypothesis, which posits that extraterrestrial visitors provided the technological know-how or even direct assistance to early humans. Proponents of these views point to the apparent impossibility of the construction as their primary evidence, asking how else we can explain the movement of multi-ton stones or the precise celestial alignments achieved without modern instruments. Mainstream archaeology and academia, however, approach these mysteries from a different angle. They firmly attribute these accomplishments to human ingenuity, patience, and a deeply accumulated, hands-on knowledge of the natural world. Their explanations don't require lost continents or otherworldly intervention. Instead, they point to the painstaking process of trial and error over countless generations, the incredible motivational power of religious belief, and the vast amount of time that prehistoric societies had to dedicate to such projects. A project that might take a community 100 years to complete is not an impossibility. It is simply a different way of conceptualizing time and legacy, where a single project could be the work of an entire lineage. What makes this debate so valuable, beyond the simple thrill of speculation, is that it forces a necessary and healthy re-examination of our assumptions about history. The conventional narrative of human progress is often a straight, upward-sloping line from primitive to advanced. The existence of these structures, regardless of who built them, puts a serious kink in that line. They challenge the smugness of our modern perspective, reminding us that sophistication is not synonymous with technology. A culture can possess a profound understanding of astronomy, geology, and acoustics without ever developing the transistor or the internal combustion engine. Their intelligence was expressed through a deep, symbiotic relationship with their environment, a form of knowledge that is far more difficult to unearth than a piece of pottery or a tool. Ultimately, whether one leans toward the more speculative theories or the grounded explanations of academic consensus, the result is the same: a renewed sense of wonder and a humbling acknowledgement of the gaps in our understanding. These subterranean marvels stand as permanent, stone-built questions. They encourage us to keep an open mind, to continue questioning, and to appreciate that the story of humanity is likely far more complex, rich, and surprising than any single textbook could ever contain. They are a testament not to what we know, but to all that we have yet to discover about our own ingenious and mysterious past. These remarkable underground structures have endured for millennia, protected by the very earth that surrounds them, but their continued survival is now facing an unprecedented array of modern threats. The delicate balance that preserved them for so long is being disrupted. The simple act of human breathing, for instance, introduces moisture and carbon dioxide into spaces like Malta's Hypogeum, which had remained sealed for centuries. This changes the microclimate, potentially leading to the growth of destructive molds and the slow degradation of ancient wall paintings. The immense popularity of these sites, while a testament to their fascination, brings its own dangers. The vibration from thousands of footsteps can, over time, cause microfractures in ancient stonework. Even the humidity from a single visitor's body can contribute to a damaging cumulative effect, forcing many sites to implement strict visitor caps to prevent what is essentially death by admiration. Beyond the direct impact of tourism, these ancient wonders are now on the front lines of a global challenge: climate change. More intense and frequent rainfall events can lead to water infiltration and flooding in spaces never designed to handle such deluges. Shifting weather patterns and rising water tables threaten the structural stability of foundations that have been dry for thousands of years. In some regions, increased seismic activity, potentially linked to a warming planet, poses a direct threat to the very integrity of these carved labyrinths. The battle for preservation is a constant and expensive one, requiring a delicate dance between allowing access for education and inspiration and implementing measures so restrictive that they essentially hide these treasures away again. Fortunately, the same wave of technological innovation that defines our modern world is also providing powerful new tools to fight this battle. The field of archaeological exploration is being revolutionized by non-invasive technologies that allow us to see through stone and soil without ever lifting a trowel. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses of energy into the earth and reads the reflected signals, mapping out hidden voids and structures like a medical sonogram for the planet. LiDAR, which uses laser light to create incredibly detailed 3D topographical maps, can reveal the subtle, ground-level hints of what lies beneath, even through dense forest canopies. Most spectacularly, muography, a technique that detects cosmic rays passing through solid matter, is being used to peer deep into the heart of the largest structures, much like a giant X-ray machine. These methods are not just theoretical, they are delivering stunning results right now. The Scan Pyramids project in Egypt made international headlines when its muon detectors revealed a significant, previously unknown void deep within the Great Pyramid of Giza, a discovery that has set Egyptologists abuzz with new theories and questions. In Cappadocia, ground-penetrating radar surveys continue to reveal new connections between known underground cities, suggesting the network is far more extensive than anyone previously dreamed. Perhaps the most heartening aspect of this technological revolution is its preventative power. Before any physical conservation work begins, engineers can now create precise digital twins of a site using 3D laser scanning. They can run simulations to see how a fragile chamber might react to reinforcement, or model water flow to plan better drainage, all within a virtual environment. This means we can test solutions and avoid catastrophic mistakes on the irreplaceable original. This marriage of cutting-edge science and ancient history offers a profound sense of hope. It allows us to shift from a paradigm of reactive repair to one of proactive preservation. We are no longer simply trying to stop these sites from crumbling. We are gaining the ability to understand them in their entirety, to monitor their health in real time, and to plan for their survival centuries into the future. Every new scan, every digital map, adds another piece to the puzzle of our shared human story, ensuring that these subterranean marvels can continue to inspire awe and wonder for generations yet to come. The thrill of discovery, that powerful urge to uncover what lies hidden in the dark, is a fundamental part of the human spirit. It's what drives archaeologists and explorers to descend into these ancient underground worlds. But this powerful curiosity must be tempered with an equally powerful sense of responsibility. We are not the first to walk these halls. We are visitors in spaces that were once homes, temples, and final resting places. The pursuit of knowledge must always be balanced with a profound respect for the cultural heritage we are handling and for the mortal remains of the people who created it. This isn't just about following rules. It's about approaching these sites with a sense of humility and reverence, recognizing that we are temporary stewards of a legacy that belongs to all of humanity. The threats to these fragile sites are very real and often irreversible. The most blatant is looting, the theft of artifacts for private gain on the black market. When a pot is snatched from a burial niche or a carving is chiseled from a wall, it isn't just an object that is lost. It is a piece of the puzzle, ripped from its context forever. Archaeology is a science of context, the location of an object, what it was found with, its position in the soil. All these details tell the story. A looted artifact becomes a lonely, silent trinket, its story erased. But damage isn't only caused by malicious intent. Well-meaning but invasive excavation techniques from the past, using heavy machinery or careless methods, have also caused irreparable harm, destroying layers of history in the rush to reach the good stuff underneath. Even today, the sheer volume of tourists, however careful, can introduce damaging levels of humidity, heat, and carbon dioxide into environments that had remained stable for millennia, slowly degrading ancient paint and soft stone. So what does ethical exploration look like in practice? It begins long before anyone sets foot underground. It means moving away from the old model of foreign experts arriving with all the answers. True ethical practice is built on collaboration and partnership with local communities and descendant populations. These are not just sites on a map. They are part of someone's living cultural landscape, their history, and their identity. Local knowledge is invaluable, and involving community members in every step from planning and excavation to interpretation and presentation ensures that the work is respectful, relevant, and beneficial to those with the deepest connection to the heritage. It transforms exploration from an extraction into a shared journey of discovery. The tools of the trade have also evolved dramatically to prioritize preservation. The mantra now is to look without touching wherever possible. Non-invasive technologies like ground-penetrating radar, three-dimensional laser scanning, and drone photography allow researchers to create incredibly detailed digital models of a site, mapping every crack and carving without ever making physical contact. If excavation is necessary, it is done with the precision of a surgeon, using dental picks and soft brushes instead of shovels, and only after all other options have been exhausted. This cautious, minimal approach ensures that these irreplaceable sites are left as intact as possible for future generations of scientists who will undoubtedly have even better tools and questions than we do today. Finally, ethical exploration demands responsible storytelling. How findings are shared with the world matters immensely. This means moving beyond sensationalist headlines about mysteries solved or treasures found, and instead focusing on communicating the complex, nuanced reality of the past. It involves creating accessible reports, engaging museum exhibits, and robust online archives that make knowledge available to everyone, not just academics. It means giving credit where it is due, honoring the ancient builders by telling their story with accuracy and dignity. This thoughtful approach ensures these subterranean wonders are preserved not as trophies to be collected or backdrops for selfies, but as everlasting sources of knowledge, inspiration, and connection to our shared human journey. Stepping into one of these ancient underground chambers is an experience that transcends a simple history lesson. It is a direct engagement with the human psyche, both ancient and modern. The initial descent often triggers a primal response. The heavy, silent darkness that envelops you, the sudden drop in temperature, the palpable weight of the earth above it can be instantly overwhelming, sparking a deep-seated claustrophobia or a thrilling sense of discovery. For a moment, you are completely disconnected from the modern world above, with its sunlight and sounds and constant connectivity. This sensory shift is profound. Your eyes strain to adjust to the dim light. Your ears become hyper-attentive to the smallest drip of water or the echo of your own breath, and your sense of touch is heightened by the cool, textured stone beneath your fingertips. This isn't just visiting a site, it's a form of time travel that engages your entire being, stripping away the distractions of the present to leave you alone with the echoes of the past. This powerful, multi-sensory experience was almost certainly a core component of the rituals performed in these spaces thousands of years ago. Ancient spiritual leaders weren't just using these chambers because they were hidden, they were leveraging their psychological impact. The disorientation caused by the darkness and the maze-like passages would have served as a powerful form of sensory deprivation, breaking down an individual's normal perception of reality and making them more receptive to suggestion, spiritual revelation, or visionary states. When combined with the mesmerizing acoustic effects we've discussed, the deep, bone-rattling resonance that could make a chant feel like a physical force, the stage was set for a truly transformative experience. This was likely a deliberate technology of consciousness, a way to facilitate a connection with the divine, communicate with ancestors, or guide initiates through a symbolic death and rebirth. The architecture itself was designed to manipulate perception, to elevate a ceremony from a simple gathering into an unforgettable psychological event that would solidify belief and bind the community together through a shared, awe-inspiring experience. For us today, visiting these spaces provokes a different but equally powerful form of reflection. Standing in the same silence that once surrounded an ancient priest or a family seeking shelter, you are confronted with the sheer resilience and creativity of our species. You can't help but marvel at the determination it took to carve a city from solid rock with simple tools, or the profound faith that would inspire a community to create a temple in the deepest darkness. It sparks a humbling comparison to our own modern lives. It makes you wonder about the nature of belief, the meaning of safety, and the universal human drive to create meaning and beauty, even in the most unlikely of places. This connection isn't intellectual, it's deeply emotional. It's a visceral understanding that these were real people with fears, hopes, and an incredible capacity to adapt and innovate against staggering odds. This psychological dimension completes our understanding of these subterranean wonders. They were never just engineering projects or cold, calculated shelters. They were carefully crafted environments designed to elicit specific emotional and spiritual responses. They were places where the boundaries between the physical and the psychological, the individual and the community, the earthly and the divine, were intentionally blurred. To walk through them is to understand that for their builders and users, these structures were alive with meaning, purpose, and power. They remind us that the most enduring human creations are those that speak not just to our practical needs, but to the deepest corners of our minds and souls. While the monumental Hypogeum and the sprawling city of Derinkuyu rightly capture our imagination, confining our exploration to Europe and Asia would paint an incomplete picture of this ancient phenomenon. The drive to build beneath the earth is a truly global story, a thread woven into the fabric of human history on nearly every continent, with each culture adapting the concept to its unique environment, challenges, and beliefs. Venturing across the Atlantic, we find one of the most stunning examples in the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde, in what is now Colorado, USA. Here, the ancestral Pueblones did not burrow down, but instead built entire villages into the sheer faces of canyon walls, using natural alcoves as their starting point. These were not merely shelters, they were complex, multi-story apartment complexes of stone and adobe, with kivas circular, partially subterranean chambers used for religious ceremonies, sunk into the plazas. This ingenious design provided natural protection from the elements and potential enemies, while the south-facing orientation captured precious winter sunlight, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of solar heating long before it became a modern, sustainable practice. Journeying to the vast landscapes of China, we discover an entirely different approach to underground living. On the lowest plateau, a massive expanse of wind-blown silt soil, generations of people have carved out homes known as yaodongs. Unlike the stone-carved cities of Cappadocia, these are dwellings excavated into the sides of hills or dug down into the ground to form sunken courtyards. The lowest soil, while soft enough to be worked with simple hand tools, is remarkably stable when dry, making it a perfect material for this kind of construction. These homes are naturally insulated, staying warm in the fierce winters and cool in the scorching summers, offering a comfortable and incredibly sustainable way of life that continues to be used by millions of people today. This isn't an ancient relic. It's a living tradition that highlights the enduring practicality and comfort of earth-sheltered architecture. Beneath the sands of Egypt, the narrative shifts from daily living to the eternal journey of the soul. While the pyramids dominate the skyline, a labyrinthine world of tunnels and tombs snakes deep beneath the ground around the Valley of the Kings. The most sacred and intricate of these subterranean spaces were designed as elaborate passageways to the afterlife, heavily decorated with hieroglyphs and paintings meant to guide and protect the pharaoh's spirit. The Serapeum of Saqqara presents another fascinating puzzle, a vast underground network of monumental granite boxes, each weighing over 100 tons, housed in tunnels and dedicated to the sacred Apis bulls. The precision with which these massive boxes were carved, moved, and positioned underground remains a subject of intense debate and wonder, showcasing an engineering prowess that continues to baffle historians. Even the cold, rugged landscapes of Scotland hold their own underground secrets. On the Orkney Islands, Neolithic villagers built structures known as earth houses or souterranes. These were stone-lined passages, often leading to a small underground chamber, built beneath their roundhouses. Their exact purpose is still debated. They might have been for storage, offering a cool, constant temperature to preserve food, or they could have served a more ritualistic purpose, perhaps as a symbolic entrance to the underworld or a safe haven during conflicts. Similarly, in North Africa, the Berber people of Matmata in Tunisia carved underground homes and communal spaces into the soft sandstone, creating central courtyards surrounded by rooms that provided respite from the relentless desert heat. What emerges from this world tour is a powerful, unifying theme of human ingenuity. From the pueblos of the American Southwest to the yaodongs of China and the tombs of Egypt, we see a shared, universal impulse to utilize the earth itself for protection, comfort, and spiritual expression. Yet within this common thread, we also see a breathtaking diversity of solutions. Each culture looked at its local geology, its climate, and its societal needs, and devised a completely unique answer to the challenge. They worked with what they had: the soft loess, the stable tuff, the solid granite, or the protective canyon alcoves, proving that innovation is not about having advanced technology, but about possessing a deep and intuitive understanding of one's environment. This global tapestry of subterranean design celebrates both our shared human instincts and the beautifully unique ways different cultures have chosen to express them. This conversation between past and present is perhaps most powerfully embodied in the principles of biomimicry, where designers and engineers look to nature, and in this case, ancient human adaptations to nature, for sustainable solutions. The ancient builders were masters of this, not by choice but by necessity. They had no option but to work in harmony with the thermal mass of the earth, to harness the stack effect for ventilation, and to orient their structures for optimal solar gain. Today, we are consciously choosing to re-embrace these principles to combat the environmental challenges of our own era. The earth-sheltered homes of the 1970s back to the land movement, for instance, were direct descendants of the Cappadocian model, using the ground's constant temperature to drastically reduce heating and cooling costs. Modern iterations of this, like the stunning Val's thermal baths in Switzerland, which is partially buried into an alpine hillside, show how this ancient tactic can be elevated into high art, creating a structure that feels both monumental and seamlessly part of the landscape. The acoustic wisdom of sites like the Hypogeum is also finding new life in the design of modern performance spaces. Concert hall architects have long struggled with the cold, often sterile acoustics of concrete and glass. Now, many are looking back to the resonant properties of stone and the organic, irregular geometries of ancient chambers to create richer, more immersive sound experiences. While we may not be carving entire theaters from solid rock, the principles are being applied through advanced digital modeling and the use of natural materials that mimic the sound-diffusing qualities of those ancient, carefully carved walls. This isn't about nostalgia, it's about recognizing that our ancestors had unlocked a deep, almost intuitive understanding of how sound waves interact with space, a knowledge we are only now fully appreciating and able to replicate with our technology. Perhaps the most critical lesson for contemporary design is the ancient focus on resilience and passive survivability. The underground cities of Turkey were designed to allow a community to function completely cut off from the surface world for extended periods. This required a closed-loop system for water, air, and waste. Today, as we face the increasing threats of climate change and extreme weather events, this concept of resilient, self-sufficient design is more relevant than ever. Architects designing for a future of power outages and resource scarcity are looking at these ancient models for inspiration, incorporating large-scale systems, passive ventilation systems that work without electricity, and geothermal heating and cooling that is independent of the grid. The ancient world provides a proven blueprint for creating habitats that are not just sustainable in a gentle sense, but are actively resilient and capable of protecting their inhabitants in the face of serious disruption. This enduring influence fundamentally challenges the modern narrative of linear progress, the idea that newer is always inherently better. It demonstrates that innovation is not always about inventing something completely novel, but often about rediscovering and adapting timeless wisdom with the new tools and materials at our disposal. The ancient builders achieved their marvels through a profound patience and a deep, observational relationship with their environment. We now have the technology to analyze and understand the physics behind their intuitive choices, allowing us to refine and scale these principles for the modern world. This creates a beautiful synergy where cutting-edge computer simulations can validate the effectiveness of a 5,000-year-old ventilation shaft, proving that the best designed solutions are often those that have already been tested by the most rigorous judge of all, time. Long before modern archaeology began to map these subterranean wonders with scientific precision, they already lived vividly in the human imagination, immortalized in the myths and legends of cultures across the globe. These stories were the ancient world's way of explaining the inexplicable, the dark, gaping entrances in hillsides, the sudden disappearance of streams into the earth, and the colossal, abandoned stonework that seemed too grand to be the work of mortals. It's no great stretch to see how a place like the vast, multi-level darkness of Derinkuyu could have inspired tales of an entire kingdom hidden beneath the earth, or how the echoing, resonant chambers of the Hypogeum might have been recounted as the haunted halls of the dead. These narratives were not mere fantasy. They were a form of proto-science, a way for people to make sense of the physical mysteries in their landscape by weaving them into the fabric of their spiritual and cultural beliefs. Consider the rich tapestry of Greek mythology, where the underworld, known as Hades, was not a place of fire and punishment but a shadowy, subterranean realm ruled by its namesake god and his queen, Persephone. It was a world separated from the land of the living by formidable rivers, and its entrance was said to be guarded by the many-headed dog Cerberus. This was a complex afterlife geography that mirrored the very real experience of descending into a deep, labyrinthine cave system, a journey from the bright, familiar world into a dark, unknown one where the normal rules of life no longer applied. Similarly, in Celtic lore, the Shia, the mysterious fairy folk, were believed to dwell in ancient burial mounds and barrows that dotted the Irish countryside. These were not kindly sprites. They were powerful, often fearsome beings who could bring great fortune or terrible misfortune to those who crossed them. The physical existence of these man-made mounds, which often concealed stone-lined passage tombs, provided a perfect anchor for stories that explained the unknown forces of nature and fate. These legends often served a dual purpose, blending spiritual belief with practical social function. A story about a dangerous spirit inhabiting a particular cave or tunnel was a highly effective way to keep curious children and adventurous individuals away from unstable or sacred sites that were meant for rituals or offered shelter in times of danger. They acted as an oral form of preservation, protecting these important locations through fear and reverence. Furthermore, these myths endowed the landscapes with meaning and power. A hill wasn't just a hill, it was the home of the gods or the gateway to another world. This sacred geography created a deep, emotional bond between a people and their land, transforming the entire environment into a living storybook where every rock and spring had a tale to tell. The fascinating interplay between these myths and the archaeological record creates a richer, more nuanced understanding of the past. We can look at the legend of the Minotaur's labyrinth in Crete and see a possible echo of the vast, confusing palace complexes unearthed at Knossos. We can hear the Celtic stories of heroes descending into the otherworld through fairy mounds and recognize the very real, physical act of entering a Neolithic passage tomb like Newgrange. Separating fact from folklore isn't about dismissing the stories as mere fiction. It's about appreciating them as a different kind of truth. They are a window into the values, fears, and hopes of the people who created them. They tell us what they found awe-inspiring, what they considered dangerous, and how they understood their place in the cosmos. Ultimately, these enduring narratives remind us that the history of these subterranean spaces is written in two languages: the language of stone and tool marks, and the language of myth and memory. The physical ruins show us the incredible what and how of ancient construction, but the stories passed down through generations offer us a precious glimpse into the why. They complete the picture, allowing us to understand that these places were not just feats of engineering, but were central to the very identity and worldview of their creators. They are a testament to the enduring human need to find magic in the world, to populate the darkness with meaning, and to ensure that even the most silent stones are never without a voice. Of all the resources necessary for survival, none is more vital than water, and for ancient communities committed to life underground, securing a reliable and safe supply wasn't just a convenience, it was the absolute linchpin of their entire existence. A hidden city could have perfect ventilation and formidable defenses, but without water, it was nothing more than an elaborate tomb. This fundamental need drove the development of some of the most ingenious hydraulic engineering the ancient world ever produced. Far from simply digging a hole for a well, these builders created integrated, sophisticated water systems that managed everything from collection and storage to distribution and purification, turning the challenges of their subterranean environment into a masterclass in sustainable resource management. Their solutions were so effective that they not only guaranteed survival, but also allowed for the flourishing of culture and ritual deep beneath the Earth's surface. The complexity of these systems is breathtaking when you consider the tools at their disposal. In the underground city of Derinkuyu, archaeologists have uncovered a stunning network of features that functioned like a modern municipal waterworks. At its heart was a massive 150-foot deep ventilation shaft that doubled as a primary well, tapping directly into a natural underground aquifer. This ensured that even when the surface entrances were sealed during a siege, those inside had access to fresh, flowing water, but they didn't stop there. Dozens of smaller, carefully camouflaged ventilation shafts also served a dual purpose, bringing in fresh air while preventing the water source from being easily poisoned or blocked by attackers above. A sophisticated network of channels carved into the stone floors directed excess moisture and wastewater away from living quarters and into sealed cisterns, preventing flooding and maintaining healthy, dry conditions. They even carved intricate wine and oil presses directly into the rock, indicating that their water security was so robust it could support not just drinking, but industry and agriculture underground. Perhaps nowhere is the marriage of water management and architectural artistry more beautifully expressed than in the stepwells of India. Known as baolis or valves, these structures are the inverse of everything we've discussed so far. Instead of building down to create living space, they are magnificent subterranean structures built exclusively to access and celebrate water. In the arid regions of Rajasthan and Gujarat, where water tables could fluctuate dramatically with the seasons, communities excavated vast, inverted pyramids down into the earth. What makes them so extraordinary is that they are so much more than mere wells. They are elaborate subterranean temples to water, featuring cascading symmetrical steps that lead down to the water's edge, lined with exquisitely carved pillars, pavilions, and hundreds of sculptured niches depicting Hindu deities. The Chand Baori in Abhanari, for instance, is a breathtaking geometric marvel with over 3,500 steps descending 13 stories into the ground. This design was profoundly practical. The steps provided easy access to the water as its level rose and fell, while the immense, shaded, and humid underground space created a cool oasis for the community to gather, socialize, and perform rituals, especially during the blistering heat of summer. The underlying hydrological understanding displayed in all these projects reveals a deep, empirical knowledge that rivals modern science. Ancient engineers knew how to locate aquifers by reading the landscape and vegetation. They understood the principles of gravity-fed distribution, carving their channels at precise angles to ensure a steady flow without erosion. They mastered the science of evaporation prevention, often designing their underground cisterns with narrow, dome-shaped openings that minimized the surface area exposed to sun and wind, keeping the water inside remarkably cool and fresh for months on end. In some Middle Eastern Qanat systems, another incredible feat of ancient hydro-engineering teams of workers would tunnel for miles into the foothills to tap into a mountain aquifer, then construct a gently sloping underground channel to transport the water by gravity to the arid plains below, all while keeping it protected from evaporation and contamination. This wasn't just digging, it was a precise and demanding science. This ancient wisdom holds powerful, urgent lessons for our modern world, particularly as climate change exacerbates water scarcity in many of these same regions. The stepwells of India, for example, did more than just store water. They actively recharged the local groundwater table. The vast, porous surface area of their steps allowed monsoon rains to percolate slowly down into the earth, filtering naturally through the sand and stone and replenishing the aquifer instead of simply running off as flash floods. This is a stark contrast to our modern concrete cities and paved-over landscapes which create immense runoff and waste precious rainwater. The passive cooling and natural insulation provided by earth-sheltered structures also present a model for energy-efficient living, reducing or eliminating the need for electrically powered air conditioning and the massive water consumption required by most power plants. The ancient approach was inherently circular and sustainable, viewing water not as a commodity to be quickly used and discarded, but as a sacred, cyclical resource to be meticulously collected, carefully conserved, and integrally woven into the very fabric of daily life and spiritual practice. In looking back at these subterranean marvels, we aren't just studying history, we are rediscovering a blueprint for resilience. Establishing a firm and reliable timeline for these subterranean marvels is one of the most daunting challenges facing archaeologists today. Unlike a coin minted with a ruler's face or a document inscribed with a date, a chamber carved from solid rock doesn't come with a built-in receipt. Determining its age requires a sophisticated toolkit of scientific detective work, a process where each method has its own strengths, limitations, and fascinating margin for error. The quest to answer the simple question, when, is anything but simple, and the answers we get often lead us not to tidy conclusions, but directly into some of history's most captivating chronological puzzles. One of the most powerful tools in this arsenal is radiocarbon dating, a technique that measures the steady decay of radioactive carbon-14 in organic material. This is incredibly useful, but it comes with a crucial caveat. It can only date things that were once alive. So, while it can't tell us when a stone wall was carved, it can provide a remarkably precise date for a piece of charcoal from an ancient builder's torch left on the floor, a wooden tool handle that crumbled and was preserved in a dry corner, or, most tellingly, the bones of the people who were buried within the structure. By dating these organic materials found in direct association with the architecture, we can reliably bracket the period of its use and construction. However, this method requires impeccable archaeological context. If a site has been disturbed over millennia, if later inhabitants cleaned out earlier debris, or if materials have shifted, the charcoal we date might be from a much later period of reuse, giving us a falsely young age for the original construction. This is where other techniques like stratigraphy come into play. Stratigraphy is the science of reading layers. It operates on a simple, powerful principle. In an undisturbed site, the deepest layers are the oldest, and the layers above them are progressively younger. An archaeologist meticulously excavating an underground city will carefully map every distinct layer of soil, ash, and debris. If they find a beautiful painted pot in a deep layer that sits directly on the bedrock floor, and then find a different style of pottery in a layer 10 feet above it, they can build a relative sequence. They can say with confidence that the deeper pot, and by extension the chamber it was found in, is older than the pot found higher up. Stratigraphy provides a crucial relative timeline, but it needs something like radiocarbon dating to anchor those layers to actual calendar years. It's the difference between knowing that event A happened before event B and knowing that event A happened in 2500 BCE. Then there's the art of stylistic analysis, which involves comparing the artistic motifs, architectural styles, and types of artifacts found at a mysterious site with those from other, well-dated sites. For example, the intricate spiral carvings found at Newgrange in Ireland bear a striking resemblance to those found at other Neolithic sites across Britain, which have been radiocarbon dated. This allows archaeologists to confidently place Newgrange within that same cultural and temporal horizon. But this method relies on a big assumption that artistic styles evolved at a consistent rate and spread in a predictable way. What if a remote community was culturally conservative and held onto an older style long after it had gone out of fashion elsewhere? Their work might look ancient but could actually be much more recent. Conversely, a breakthrough in design could make a site appear younger than it truly is. It is the occasional, thrilling conflict between these different dating methods that truly fuels historical debate and can upend established narratives. A prime example is the ongoing discussion around the megalithic temples on the island of Malta, including the Hypogeum. Some researchers, using advanced techniques like thermal ionization mass spectrometry to date minute amounts of plaster from the temples, have proposed dates that push their initial construction phase centuries further back than previously believed. If these earlier dates are correct, it suggests that the sophisticated society that built these structures developed its complex traditions much earlier and potentially in greater isolation than once thought, forcing a rewrite of the cultural chronology of the entire central Mediterranean. These chronological puzzles are far more than academic squabbles. They are the very engine of historical discovery. A shift of a few hundred years in the timeline of an underground city can completely alter our understanding of who built it and why. A structure dated to a period of peace and prosperity was likely a temple or a communal storage facility. That same structure, if redated to a period of intense invasion and social collapse, suddenly becomes a brilliant refuge for survival. Each refined date is another piece of the puzzle, allowing us to slowly reconstruct the grand narrative of human technological and cultural evolution. It helps us see connections between distant cultures, track the spread of ideas, and appreciate the breathtaking pace of innovation, or the long, stable periods of tradition that define these ancient worlds. The slow, meticulous work of pinning down dates is ultimately what allows the silent stones to finally tell their story in full. Perhaps the most thrilling aspect of this digital revolution is how it empowers you to become an active participant in the process of discovery, not just a passive observer. Many of these virtual platforms are integrated with citizen science initiatives, inviting the public to contribute meaningfully to ongoing research. You might be asked to help catalog artifacts from high-resolution photos, transcribe ancient handwritten documents from archaeological digs, or even flag potential features of interest on newly mapped satellite imagery of historical landscapes. Projects like these, often hosted on platforms like Zooniverse, harness the collective power of curious minds around the world to achieve tasks that would take a small team of researchers decades to complete. This transforms the experience from a simple tour into a genuine collaboration, where your curiosity can directly contribute to a greater understanding of our shared human past. It's a powerful reminder that preservation isn't just the job of archaeologists in far-off places. It's a global effort, and now anyone with an internet connection can play a part. This engagement often sparks deeper journeys, inspiring viewers to seek out books, documentaries, and online lectures, turning a moment of virtual exploration into a lifelong passion for history and a more profound appreciation for the fragile wonders still hidden beneath our feet. The tools we use to peer into the past are undergoing a revolution more profound than any since the invention of radiocarbon dating. The future of subterranean archaeology is not just about sharper trowels or more careful brushing. It is converging with the cutting edge of computational science, physics, and community-led discovery. We are on the cusp of a new era where the very concept of excavation is being redefined, moving from a process of physical extraction to one of virtual revelation, allowing us to map entire hidden worlds without ever disturbing a single grain of soil. At the forefront of this shift are technologies like LiDAR, which uses laser pulses to strip away vegetation and create stunningly detailed three-dimensional maps of the Earth's surface. This has already revolutionized our understanding of sites in dense jungles, revealing vast urban complexes previously swallowed by the rainforest. But the next generation of this technology is looking down not just at the surface. Advanced ground-penetrating radar systems are becoming exponentially more sensitive, capable of distinguishing between different densities of soil, voids of air, and even the ghostly impressions of long-rotted wooden posts. These systems are being mounted on drones that can survey large areas with incredible precision, creating subterranean maps that archaeologists can then explore digitally, identifying promising anomalies. A potential burial chamber here, a collapsed tunnel there, with a degree of accuracy that minimizes destructive digging. Perhaps the most transformative partner in this endeavor is artificial intelligence. The amount of data generated by satellite imagery, drone surveys, and geophysical scans is immense, far more than any team of humans could hope to analyze in a lifetime. AI algorithms, however, can be trained to scour this data, looking for subtle patterns and signatures invisible to the naked eye. An AI can be taught to recognize the unique subsurface footprint of a specific type of ancient wall or the drainage pattern of a filled-in canal system. It can compare newly discovered sites with thousands of others in a global database, suggesting cultural connections or construction techniques that might have taken researchers decades to uncover. This isn't about replacing archaeologists. It's about empowering them with a powerful new set of eyes that can process information on a scale we can barely comprehend. This technological leap is fundamentally changing the nature of archaeological collaboration. The romantic image of a lone academic directing a dig is giving way to large, interdisciplinary teams that look more like a tech startup. You now have software engineers writing code to visualize data, geophysicists interpreting radar returns, materials scientists analyzing microscopic residues on ancient plasters, and acoustic engineers modeling the sound properties of a chamber. This fusion of expertise breaks down the silos of traditional academia, leading to richer, more holistic interpretations. A structural engineer can look at the load-bearing pillars in Derinkuyu and provide insights into the builder's intuitive understanding of physics that an archaeologist might have missed. This collaborative model ensures that the stories we tell about these sites are informed by every possible dimension of knowledge. Crucially, the future of this field is also becoming more inclusive and ethical. There is a growing and vital recognition that the most important collaborators are the local communities and descendant populations who live alongside these ancient wonders. These sites are not just academic puzzles, they are part of a living cultural heritage. the most meaningful research projects now involve community members from the very beginning, integrating their oral histories, their traditional knowledge, and their perspectives on how a site should be studied, preserved, and shared. This partnership ensures that the benefits of discovery flow back to the people with the deepest connection to the legacy, transforming archaeology from an act of extraction into a shared journey of cultural revitalization and mutual respect. With these powerful new tools and collaborative frameworks, we can finally begin to approach some of the field's most enduring mysteries. We may soon know the true, full extent of the network beneath Cappadocia. Are the known cities merely the tip of a continent-spanning subterranean iceberg? We might finally solve the purpose of enigmatic features like the massive stone boxes in the Serapeum of Saqqara, or decode the meaning behind the acoustic resonance of the Hypogeum's oracle chamber. Each answered question will inevitably lead to a dozen new ones, a perpetual and thrilling cycle of discovery that keeps the past vibrantly alive and constantly evolving. This ongoing journey invites every single one of us to stay engaged, to follow the new findings, and to marvel at how the silent, dark spaces beneath our feet are finally beginning to reveal their deepest secrets, reminding us that the greatest book of history is still being read, one incredible page at a time. We've explored these incredible subterranean worlds in isolation, marveling at their hidden engineering and spiritual resonance. But to truly grasp their genius, we must finally ascend back to the surface, because these underground marvels were rarely meant to stand alone. They were, more often than not, just one integral part of a much larger, meticulously planned whole, a holistic complex that seamlessly wove together the world below with the world above. The massive stone circles, towering pyramids, and grand temples we see on the surface were not separate projects. They were the above-ground counterparts to the labyrinths beneath, two halves of a single, profound design philosophy that saw the landscape in three sacred dimensions. This integrated vision becomes stunningly clear when we examine the celestial connections. Consider Newgrange in Ireland once more. The entire massive mound, with its spiraling white quartz facade and intricate curbstones, is an imposing surface feature. But its ultimate purpose is only revealed once a year, deep inside its hidden chamber, when the winter solstice sun pierces the long passageway. The above-ground structure acts as a grand aiming mechanism, a monumental sightline that captures the sun's rays and channels them down into the heart of the underworld. This isn't just an underground tomb with a lucky alignment. It is a single, unified instrument designed to marry the power of the sun with the mystery of the earth in a breathtaking celestial event. The surface and the subsurface are working in perfect, harmonious concert. This principle of vertical integration extends far beyond Ireland. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid of Giza is the most famous surface megalith on Earth, but its true complexity lies in the fact that it is also a massive subterranean structure. Deep beneath its base, hewn directly from the bedrock, is a mysterious, unfinished subterranean chamber connected to the upper passages by a steep, descending corridor. While the king's and queen's chambers are within the pyramid's body, this lower chamber roots the entire monument into the earth itself. Furthermore, the so-called air shafts emanating from the upper chambers are now widely believed to be precisely aligned with specific stars, suggesting the pyramid was designed as a machine to connect the buried pharaoh's soul not just with the earth below, but with the specific constellations of the night sky above. It was a vehicle for ascension that was grounded, quite literally, in the underworld. This holistic view forces us to completely reconsider the purpose of these sites. They weren't just temples or tombs or shelters. They were all these things at once, designed as complete ritual landscapes. The surface structures likely served as very public arenas for communal gathering, celebration, and initial stages of ceremony. They were the realm of the living, bathed in sunlight and open to the sky. The act of then descending underground was a powerful symbolic transition, a journey into a more secret, sacred, and potent space reserved for initiation, communion with ancestors, or the final act of burial. The entire experience, from the open-air plaza to the deepest, darkest chamber, was a carefully choreographed spiritual pathway, with the architecture itself guiding participants through a physical and psychological transformation. This masterful blending of the celestial, terrestrial, and subterranean reveals a worldview that is almost foreign to our modern, compartmentalized thinking. For these ancient builders, the universe was a continuous, interconnected system. The cycles of the sun and stars were directly linked to the cycles of planting and harvest, which were in turn linked to the human cycles of life, death, and rebirth. Their architecture was a physical manifestation of this belief, by building structures that reached for the heavens while simultaneously digging deep into the earth. They were creating a sacred axis mundi, a cosmic center that bound all layers of existence together. They were not just building for the present, they were constructing a perpetual stone-built engine to ensure the harmony of the cosmos, the fertility of the land, and the eternal journey of the human spirit. In understanding these connections, we see them not as primitive stoneworkers, but as master architects of the human experience. As we bring our exploration to a close, it's worth pausing to consider the profound legacy these subterranean worlds leave for us today. They stand not as dusty relics of a forgotten past, but as enduring monuments to a form of intelligence that was both deeply practical and richly spiritual. The ancient builders looked at a hillside and saw more than rock. They saw potential. They saw a canvas for art, a sanctuary for their community, a temple for their gods, and a fortress for their survival. Their genius lay in this holistic vision, an ability to weave together the practical need for shelter with the profound human yearning for meaning, creating spaces that served the body and the soul in equal measure. This multifaceted approach to problem solving, which considered engineering, artistry, acoustics, and astronomy as parts of a single unified whole, is perhaps their greatest gift to us. These hidden cities and resonant chambers also offer a powerful lesson in resilience. They speak of communities that planned not just for the next season, but for generations to come. They invested immense collective effort into projects whose full utility might not be realized for centuries, building a legacy of safety and stability for their descendants. In an era often defined by short-term thinking and disposable culture, their long-term perspective is a startling and inspiring contrast. They teach us that true resilience isn't just about reacting to immediate threats. It's about foresight, about building systems, whether physical, social, or spiritual, that can endure, adapt, and provide shelter through the unforeseeable challenges of the future. Their underground refuges are a masterclass in sustainable living, working in harmony with the Earth's natural properties for temperature control, water management, and ventilation, principles that are more relevant than ever in our current age. Most importantly, these worlds beneath our feet challenge the very narrative of human progress. It's a story we often tell as a straight, upward line from primitive to advanced, from simple to complex. But the evidence carved into the bedrock of Malta, Turkey, and Ireland puts a dramatic kink in that line. It reveals that sophistication is not a synonym for technology. A society can possess a breathtaking understanding of geology, physics, and cosmology without microchips or steel. Their advancements were expressed through a deep, intimate dialogue with their environment, a form of knowledge built on patient observation and handed down through generations. This should fill us not with a sense of superiority, but with a profound humility and a renewed curiosity about the depths of human potential. It reminds us that intelligence manifests in countless ways, and that some of the most brilliant solutions are those that are timeless, sustainable, and beautifully integrated into the fabric of the world. So what do these hidden worlds ultimately reveal? They show us that our ancestors were not so different from us. They faced existential threats, they grappled with the mysteries of life and death, and they used their creativity and cooperation to build a better, safer world for their children. They simply expressed their brilliance in a different language, a language of stone and earth, of aligned passages and amplified sound. Their legacy invites us to look beneath the surface in our own lives, to question the stories we tell about the past, to seek out the deeper layers of meaning in our present, and to consider what kind of enduring marvels we might leave for the future. They remind us that history is not a single story written on parchment, but a multi-layered tapestry still being unearthed, still full of secrets waiting for the light.